Welcome back to another reaction, this time for Reincarnated as a Dragon Hatchling Episode 4.
ダメじゃん。絶対に森へ行ってはならん。でもドーズさんが生きてるかもしれないんです。
He's not.
ではなぜ村に戻ってこんのじゃ。それはわかりませんが、私だけだと危ないなら村のみんなで捜索を。いい加減にせんか。ミリアも村の者を危険にさらすわけにはいかん。はい。安心せえ。ギルドへ調査を頼んでおく。すぐに冒険者が来てくれるはずじゃ。わかりました。無理を言ってすみませんでした。
昨日はよく食ってよく寝たな。進化の術目指してこれからガンガンレベル上げだ。
Yeah. He decided to transform into some kind of evil dragon because he got lured by the human transformation and now he is stuck. Right, we met the slime he was unable to identify. So let's see.
何だったんだあれ。絶対に近寄っちゃダメなやつだろう。いや、でも数値自体は大したことなかったけど、まあ触らぬ神にたたりなしって言うしな。今日は別の方角を探してみよう。
What is that jar?
なんだあれ、壺？果物とか入れとくのにちょうどいいかもな。モンスターかよ。
Potter toys. I mean, that seems like a lot weaker than he is.
壺亀ってことは亀なのか？ドラゴンパンチ！
Oh, it's one of those. High defense and stuff.
全然ってねえ。一気にやるしか。ほらこれならどうだ。
Does it at least have or give a lot of experience? Like a meta slime, right? That's bullshit.
この野郎レスト使いやがった。硬すぎる。だったら亀なのにどうして
Smart.
陸にいたのかな。お前泳げるのか。
Question is, does it count as your kill?
経験値を
It does.
36得ました。称号歩く卵によりさらに経験値を得ました。レベルが14から15へと上がりました。
Now, it didn't really give extra experience, however, now, because of the type of monster that is, it probably doesn't have many predators. There's probably... If this was something like Dungeon Meshy, to, you know, the whole pull of that show was that we have a whole ecosystem, there are explanations for stuff. For this type of monster, you need like a specific counter, maybe something that can, like these little specific wasp types that can lay eggs in their prey. Maybe something along those lines that can specifically hunt these type of enemies that are nearly unkillable for anyone else. that means that outside of those specific killers, these guys are untouchable because they are not worth hunting. It takes far too much energy, meaning that there should be an abundance of them and he can just throw them into water. And that is an easy XP farm.
激闘の後の汗は心地いいな。
称号卑劣の王
Maybe it's not a good idea to do this. Now that I think about it, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it takes too much energy. Not because it seems like you get negative
を得ま
titles.
した悪の道のレベルが2から3へと上がりました
Wasn't one of them? Oh my god, there are a bunch of them. Wasn't one of them giving him the more chance to get an evil evolution or something like that?
なんだこの数。
I mean, it is a lot of experience. A lot of easy experience.
そうか、仲間呼びやがったな。え、まさかこいつら合体。
Why?
なわけねえか。じゃあ行くぜ。ほら、くらえ。
スキル星落としを得ました
おう、これスキル認定してくれるんだ。
That was enough to kill them? Really? Why didn't you do that with the other one?
経験値を594得ました
Eh. I would have liked it more if you just rolled them all over the cliff.
称号歩く卵によりさらに経験値を得ましたレベルが15から30へと上がりました
Okay.
スキル
I just needed to. He got like 36 for one level up, and now he got like 600, so that is close to a lot more than 15 even. Makes sense, okay.
飛行のレベルが1から2へと上がりましたステータス閲覧のレベルが4から5へと上がりました
Mm.
おお、やっぱ集団で倒すと効率がいい。
What is it dust from your wings?
あ、ダメだな。こいつらを倒すにはどうしても甲羅を割っちゃうな。綺麗なまま手に入れたかったんだが。まあ、レベルも上がったし、肉も手に入ったからよしとするか。肉だけじゃなくて野菜も欲しいな。野菜大事。しかし、ここまでレベルが上がっても人
I also don't know if vegetables are important for you. You are a dragon.
化の術を覚えられないんだが。
As it is important for humans, not necessarily important for other animals.
次の進化までレベル10だけど、本当にそこまでに覚えられんのか？なんだこの音。足音っぽい。今まで聞いたことないぞ。
Hmm. Fair?
クマ？でもなんか変だな。ステータス。
距離が開きすぎているので個体のステータスは取得できません種族の詳細ならば開示できます
頼む。
クレイ
Monster made from Claude.
ベア D プラスランク
Someone
モン
made
スター
this.
土くれから生み出されたモンスター
Or this is just its origin. I assumed because it said monster made from Claude that maybe someone summons a monster, but I guess it was made from clay. Or it is a clay monster, essentially.
力が強くまた再生能力も高い
俺と同ランクってことか。だったら十分戦って倒せるか。 それにクレイペア、つまり熊の形をした粘土ってことか。だったらぶっ倒して形整えて焼いて固めりゃ壺と鍋が手。
I was like, fired up, what do you mean? How do you use fire? But then I remembered he's like a dragon type. He had fire breath at point. I don't know if it transformed into whatever he's now, poison type. But as long as he has his fire breath, sure, he can burn clay.
に入るんじゃねえのか。よし、マイホームのインテリアにしてやるよ。まったく俺に気づく様子もねえ。それなら奇襲で決めてやる。くら
Why are you not checking its stats? You're just attacking it. You don't know how strong it is, how fast it is, how intelligent,
ない。
what its abilities are.
別の王の拳。おお、遅い。うわー。クマじゃねえ。あいつクマじゃねえぞ。あいつにベアなんか名乗る資格はねえ。
If not bear, why bear shaped? You know? Again, I feel like it would be wise to check the stats to see what it does. Beforehand, it could have a regenerative ability. It did say it is a strong monster with regenerative abilities in some way, shape, or form. And it's just going to heal. Maybe it's consuming stuff and that is how it heals. Or just cast regenerate.
このままだとキリがねえぞ。どうする。今の俺があいつを一撃でやるのは無理だ。威力が一番あるのはさっき覚えた星落としだが、あんな重いやつ抱えて飛べるわけないし。
We don't even know what this skill does, which is one of the parts that I do not like. We don't really get any insight. Because it's like, okay, this meteorite skill is his strongest skill. How much damage does it do? We ever gonna find out? But because it's a clay monster, you could just fire it up. Then it could not move anymore. You could also use water. Similar to the pots. Clay should be susceptible to water unless fired up. That's one of the reasons you fire clay. That then it is not going to dissolve in water anymore. Those two ways, I assume, or you just whittle it down faster than it can regenerate. Additionally, the regenerate ability is most likely one that uses mana. So you could try to outlast its mana supply. But that we don't really know. We don't have the stats, which again, I feel like you should check. Okay, we go with that approach, understandable. So we attack over and over until its MP runs out, he can't regenerate anymore, and then it's just a question of time. Especially if he can't hit you, you are not going to run out of resources, potentially. I don't know if his abilities use mana, like the roll and stuff. But if not, then the chance is pretty good to have it run out of resources before you are. I mean, you would know if you just checked its stats at some point. I'm also assuming that the sandstorm cost mana to cast.
お前反則だろそれ。完全に転がる対策じゃねえか。背後取る作戦はもう無理だ。MP めっちゃ減ってる。自己再生に砂嵐、それに、変形使ったからか。
Interesting approach. I don't know where it got its horn from. But using it as a projector, okay. I mean, the side still seems to be somewhat undefended. However, that is more dangerous to attack. You have the top still free. You have the feet free. So there are more ways to attack. Not even talking about you have different abilities. Now you even have a projector you could meteorite back. You don't have a projector anymore to meteorite back.
こいつの体どうなってんだ。もしかして今だ。体から離れると柔らかくなる。
I'm assuming it needs to use transform to get these body parts back as well.
これを星落としで叩きつけて。いや、それだけだと多分あいつの HP は削りきれねえ。ちょっとでも残したら。
I mean, yes, you can throw the ball of mud at him, but it is still unfired clay. It's not going to be that destructive. It's not a rock, which I feel like you could have probably gotten by running around. Something like a rock, you could have thrown it in. Additionally, the option is also that he just can take this clay back and use it on his own body. The pot he just threw, this one he's just used as a weapon. That's a little bit weird. Okay, double. Understandable is 37, but now 150, okay.
よかった。
Nutcracker. Which nuts did we crack? I don't. So the leveling seems to be... The requirement for leveling seems to increase.
スキルくるみ割りを得ました。
くるみ割り？ああ、今の攻撃そういう。
Oh, this is not the same skill. Okay. If it's not meteorite, understandable.
スキルになるのか。あんまりかっこよくないけど、まあ。
I don't know. Giving every move a skill name. Sure, it would make it more organic, or it feels more organic, the skill requirement. However, it can get overwhelming because then you need to, from a story point, you need to have like rules which abilities or which moves count as skills and which just don't. I feel like that can get very blurry real quick. So not too much of a fan of every attack turning into a skill. The roll one, totally understandable. The meteorite I could maybe see, mostly because it's more or less Pokemon. But now we have the Nutcracker. It's like, okay, if you use your... If you just scratch someone, do you get the ability scratch? And it doesn't take long until all your status window is full of skills that you used. So I don't know. I would like if, in this case, I would like an improvised skill category where just stuff that doesn't get an own skill is getting put into, and the effectiveness is just reduced of the skill itself. You know, otherwise it's going to be hard to make it feel acceptable, because he's going to use some kind of attack and then we need it to turn into a skill.
確かにくるみ割りっぽいか。とにかく粘土ゲットだぜ。
Now, one part. How are you wanting to make like a pot? You know that is you need to train a little bit to make stuff into pots. That is a skill that you need to learn, and you would probably need like a normal hand, not one that has these sharp weapons on the end. I also wonder, really, how did you do that? I call bullshit. Additionally, he's a dragon. Can he asphyxiate? Is that possible?
こんなもんかな。
Let's say he burns too much, not enough wind and not enough air is circulating. Could he just die from lack of oxygen? So he made a kiln. Now I don't know the process exactly, but I do know that essentially you want the pot to be under high temperature, or for it to dry out or something like that, to more or less turn into ceramic, to not dissolve into water. That is essentially what we are trying to do. We want the clay to not dissolve in water anymore. Now the problem is, one of the big problems as far as I know, that if there's water particles inside the clay, it is going to expand and it can crack the pot itself. So there is a certain amount of failure rate. However, on YouTube you can watch these YouTubers that do this. Primitive Technology, I believe it was, which I like quite a bit. There it was shown that you can use pottery that got cracked, that you can't use, you can make smaller and put into new clay. That way the new clay has a lower risk of cracking and becomes more, your yield of pottery is going to be higher if you use old pottery or a little dust of the old pottery. I don't know why. I don't know the physics behind it. It seems to work. I assumed he would just use his fire breath continuously to just burn the pottery, but I guess this works as well. How did he acquire the kiln? I don't know. He made it himself, seemingly, even though he has claws, as far as I remember.
焼き上がりを待つまで鍋の具材を集めるか。
I do want to see his hands again. He has fucking claws. And I assume they're not retractable. By the way, you can't eat that. The more colorful something is in nature, the more likely it is to be poisonous. Or venomous, depending. But yeah, how did he make pottery with these claws? Already a little bit questionable. I mean, I could maybe see making a kiln as well. I mean, with enough time, yes. Not in a day. I mean, even if you had your normal human hands, I feel like most people, if like 90+%, would not be able to make a pot in a day, even with modern technology, at least not a good one. You may make like a misshapen version, but a good pot you are most likely not going to do in a day. You need to, you know, train a little bit.
こいつはどうかな。
雷だけ価値 E マイナス
Lightning shroom.
木の栄養を根こそぎ奪い取るため規制された木には実がならなくなるという。他から奪い取る分自分の栄養素は豊富で美味、ただし軽い麻痺毒を持っている。
麻痺か。俺耐性ないから無理だな。ステータス閲覧のレベルが上がっていろんな情報が分かりやすくなったな。
Again, I don't. There are shows. It is so crazy how many different versions exist. There are a good amount of shows where you get similar to here. He uses a skill, he gets, or he uses an attack, and it gets transformed into a skill. There are a lot of shows where you eat something like this one, which has a paralyzing poison, and then you get a resistance skill against that. And then you can slowly but surely train that skill to become more and more resistant to that effect. I assume the same is true here, so I feel like it would have been worth a try for him to take that in his little hut, maybe make a clay wall beforehand, or close the little hole he calls a home, and then eat the mushroom, see if you get a resistance to it, because that is going to help you in the long run, a resistance. More than all the skills he gets, all the abilities, resistances, everything that is defensive based, I would prefer a lot more in this kind of environment, because I don't want to die. Because all the skills in the world don't help me if I'm dead. But all the defensive skills allow me to survive longer.
助かるぜ。こいつ
Yeah, this looks like a plant that is going to eat you.
も鑑定してみるか。
人食い花
I didn't want to see it animated anyway. Huh?
価値 C マイナス動物を食らう珍しい植物。ただ塩分は消化できないため根の白化した部分に溜まっている。
Interesting. Again, I feel like this is where these kinds of stories can be more interesting. They can play around a little bit. Again, similar to Dungeon Meshi. If you have not watched it, highly recommend it. Where you have this flower that eats animals. So human or meat eating flower, which is not too rare, okay. But it can't digest salt, so this is a way to have like a salt source in the world that is canonical, instead of having like oceans and whatever. And if you do this in different ways, there are shows, as examples, that have like specific flowers or other stuff that then have properties of spices, which again, this makes more fantasy-like, but we still know salt. We know what it does. We know for what you use it. We know it is very useful. This is how they can get salt. The same with like pepper and maybe some chili. It makes it, again, more fantasy-like because how we acquire it is different, but also very familiar, which is what you need. You need to strike a good balance between fantasy-like, so you don't lose your suspension of disbelief, but still familiar enough to not get lost.
食肉植物か。物騒だけど、ここに塩が溜まっているのか。
Now, how you get the salt out of there, I don't know.
料理するなら塩は必須だな。もらっていくか。
What I would do in this case, I would just have this. I mean, it looks a little bit like garlic or onion. I would probably treat it like garlic. I would say there are like little bulbs inside you can get, and you can crate them or make them really small, and they're very salty. So it's not necessarily salt like we know it, but something that adds a paste you can make that is very, very salty.
だな。もらっていくか。
I mean, salt has a lot of uses. I mean, cooking, sure, but also making stuff be fresh longer, or not fresh, but not go bad longer. Now that is with normal salt. I don't know if the paste would do the same.
ダメじゃん。
Yeah, didn't we? You know, the last time you didn't listen to her, you got a whole group killed. So, how about you listen this time?
絶対に森
Or
へ
do you
行っては
want
な
more
らん。
people to die?
マリエルさん、ごめんなさい。安心せえ。ギルドへ調査を頼んでおく。すぐに冒険者が来てくれるはずじゃ。でも、ドーズさんが生きている可能性があるなら。
わしが釣りをしてたらな、どうそう森の茂みの中にいたんじゃ。けどわしに気づかんまま森の奥へ消えちまったんよ。なんかブツブツ言いながらな。
本当かどうかはわからない。でも、
ミリア、お前が行かなくても俺たちはイワリーを退治に行くぜ。でもお前が手伝ってくれないと俺もグランツも死ぬかもしれねえ。
Yeah, and you went with them, and guess what? They still died. Or at least one of them definitely died, the other one potentially is alive. Still, all because you didn't listen to the elf girl, and now you do the same.
そんな。わかりました。でも、危険だと思ったらすぐ戻ってくださいね。あの時私が止めていればこんなことにはならなかった。だからドーズさんが生きているなら。
You don't. You don't. You are not responsible for them. They gaslit you into following because they were all like, "Oh yeah, she's the elf girl or whatever. Yeah, no, she totally agrees and bullshit." So yeah, there's no reason to be responsible for them at all.
私が見つけてあげないと。落ち着いていけば大丈夫。
I mean, the first thing would be to not just walk openly in the forest, I feel like. Additionally, we do know monsters evolve into different species, but it seemed like that humans don't follow the same path, which again could be very interesting, like the contrast. Which is one of those parts that is why I like isekai fantasy stuff. Because there's still a lot of stuff you can make. And isekai has a lot of... It is a lot easier to approach. Especially whenever you use like systems in this way where you can see stats. It's a lot easier to get behind. Now, they do go a little bit too far with some of these shows where you have like a billion stats and are like, okay, what is going on? But I feel like there's still so much potential,
化け物だけ
untapped potential for that matter.
価値 D 成長すると自分で動けるようになり人を襲うモンスターとなる肉に似た味がし珍味扱いされている
Sure, but is it considered a delicacy whenever it starts walking or before?
これもいいな。
Another one of those points where you could have like a whole ecosystem around this. It's like, okay, whenever this specific mushroom is young, it is poisonous, as example. And whenever it gets more mature, it becomes more and more delicious. But as soon as it starts walking, the meat becomes less edible by the day because it's using a lot of muscles or whatever, a lot of energy, making the meat a lot more gamey. You know, you could have like a whole system there where it's like, okay, you want to get it at the right time. You don't want to remove it too early.
煮込んだらいい出汁が出そうだ。
And with that, you could have different monsters eat it at different times. Maybe there's a monster that eats it whenever it is small because they are immune to the poison. And some eat it at the, you know, between whenever the meat is delicious. And other ones maybe eat it whenever it is fully grown because it gives more meat. You know, you could have a whole system around there.
あ、また変わったキノコ見っけ。
モロトロジア価値
Value A. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, you take it with you, right?
A
価値 A。
栽培に成功すれば財政の傾いた国が立ち直ると言われているほど価値のあるキノコ幻覚作用があり強烈な多幸感を生じさせる500年前潰して興奮剤と混ぜる方法が発見され多くの中毒者を生み出し
ダメ絶対
Why are you burning it? You know, you're a monster. You need a little bit fun. Come on, just take a little hit. Just one little one.
称号ちっぽけな勇者のレベルが1から2へと上がりました
Nah, I would take it. Now, I don't know how long this would be. These mushrooms would stay alive or be edible. But I mean, a whole little bag of this mushroom powder would probably be worth quite a lot of money. Maybe I would even try to cultivate it. I would do the same with a mushroom. Because I need some source of meat for the future. Stuff like that. Because I can't really count on getting the transformation skill. Because I don't know the trigger. By the way, I don't know how these wolves have not smelled her, but sure.
ピペリス価値 B プラス食欲を増進させる独特の香りを持ちかつて最も人気のある香辛料とされていた
A spice.
金持ちの貴族からの需要が高く同じ重さの金と
Unique aroma that works up an appetite. I don't know which one that would be. I'm assuming it's like a pepper one. Right? Piperous? Pepper?
貴族からの需要が高く同じ重さの金と等しい価値があるとまで言われている
おえこの実にはそんな高い価値があったのか。とりあえず集めておくかな。ふっほっはっいっほっいっ
I mean, that makes sense. Again, I do like this aspect of like the fantasy genre where we can have a different approach to some of these items.
だいぶ奥まで入ってきたみたい。
What are you doing?
ここから先は危ない。
It is already too dangerous. You ran past 3 wolves. I don't believe you can fight those guys off. Even if you ambushed them, you maybe were able to kill one of them. Maybe the second one, but the third one would just rip you apart.
大量大量。
村の周辺だけもう一度見回って、それから帰ろう。
さすが光だ。
I mean, even if they meet, the girl doesn't know this is the same guy. So
だけ名前にたがわぬ性能だ。そろそろか。
now this I find a little bit. You don't need light. You don't need. You're a dragon. You probably have night vision.
そろそろか。おお、成功だ。これで料理ができる。そろそろかな。あ、うまい。やっぱ塩ってすごいんだな。
You should not forget that he made this pottery with his claws. And he's eating. He's using chopsticks with his claws. Sure.
塩気に加えて肉の旨味もスープに溶け出てて。いやー、なんか忘れかけてた生活を取り戻した気がする。
称号コックさんのレベルが1から2へと上がりました。
この丼ちょっと飲みにくかったな。さっきも随分とこぼれちゃったし。新しいやつ作るか。そうだ、今度はスプーンも用意して、あとは壁もレンガで覆うかな。
称号陶芸職人を得ました。
That's the kind. The cook makes sense. Cook, okay, something overarching. But ceramic artisan. Just give him artisan. And then we can just have it for everything. Which, again, this having too many skills, even though, oh, so cool, look at all these skills. It is being overwhelming at some point. People don't care. That is why slime does it pretty well. Because there you have a function where you can use skills together, removing the bloat. But a lot of shows don't really have that. So it's better to not even go overboard unless there's a good reason where you, or a plan where you just remove a bunch of skills later. Otherwise, it just gets too much. Probably one of the reasons we don't see his status anymore. Because it's just too much to put on the screen.
お客さん、森が見えましたよ。
ベルティアさん起きてください。着きましたよ。
New lady?
間違いありません。ギルドの探索依頼があった場所です。
あれがノアの森か。
Okay.
ただいま。まあ返事はないよな。とりあえず狼の肉と毛皮の処理だな。毛皮のなめしは後でやるとして、なんか俺この世界に適応してるな。
Pretty sure he should already be level 40 at this point, right? Because he killed a bunch of wolves, He gathered a bunch of stuff.
So, 猿ども。このままじゃ、せっかくの干し肉も猿に全部食われ。
Why do you have them outside? Just make drying racks outside of your little hole. Put up a wall. A simple palisade would be enough. And done.
ちまうな。なんか手を考えないと。見てろよ、猿ども。この壺で作った特製毒を干し肉に塗り込んで食わせてやるからな。
So his evil ranks or titles are going to rank up, I guess?
なんか俺、最近植物を見るとき、自然に毒があるかどうか見る癖がついちまったな。お、ここなら毒花もあるかもな。いや、毒だけじゃなくて、すさんだ日常の潤いに、洞窟の周りに花を植えるのもいいかもな。
It's even better if they are poisonous, because that is going to put off some animals and monsters, which I just found out recently. The corpse flower that is somewhat recognizable as an anime fan is used on graveyards or in graveyards because they have like poison or whatever, and they, you know, create a little bit of a bad natural barrier for animals to not go near the graveyard, which I find very, you know, interesting. So you could do the same. Right, I forgot about her. I didn't. But I had no idea we would come to that right now.
初めて見るモンスターだ。
Venom Princess Lacerta. Normal. Oh, has also the roll ability.
種族ベネムプリンセスレチェルタ。スキル毒牙毒爪毒毒ポイズンマスター。
なんだこいつ、所持スキルが毒関連ばっかだぞ。逃げたのか。そっちか。しまった、クレイガンのスキルか。逃げた。なんだ、戦闘放棄か。なんだこの痛み、変だぞ。
毒耐性のレベルが3から4へと上がりました。
Again, then it would have made more sense to eat the paralyzing flower, mushroom.
なんて毒だ。肩が動かない。
I mean, Poison Princess knows how to fight. It's like, okay, I'm trying to get them off guard, inject them with poison, and then I'm going to dial out of here, and I'm waiting.
もしかしてあいつ。
Now, the big problem is that monsters are more or less animals, and animals normally only fight for territory or to eat. So this is not really goal-oriented of her, because I don't assume it is going to try to eat the big thing. Territory, maybe. But yeah, I do know, I mean, you see in the ending, the little poison princess. Because I did read the manga up to a specific point. I don't really know how this resolves, though. Again, maybe it's just the defending territory. I found it a little bit weird that he was able to use his claws to make clay stuff. That he's trying to make it like a human kind of home that he's in, instead of just concentrating on survival first. Like making a little garden, growing some specific fruits, protecting his own home before he then makes it into something that is more like a modern day home. But fair enough, fair enough.